man is arrested on suspicion of terrorism offences after a car crashes outside the Houses of Parliament, injuring several people. The suspect is in his late 20s. Police say he had no weapons and there was no one else in the car with him. The Ford Fiesta car hit cyclists and pedestrians before crashing into a security barrier protecting the Palace of Westminster.
Given that this appears to be a deliberate act, the method, and this being an iconic site, we are treating it as a terrorist incident.
I'll be reporting live from the scene. Police say they are questioning the terror suspect at a police station in South London. So far, though, he is refusing to answer their questions about who he is and what were his motives.
Also on the programme this lunchtime, a motorway bridge has partially collapsed in the Italian city of Genoa, with dozens feared dead. The government says it fears an immense tragedy. England cricketer Ben Stokes is found not guilty of a fray at Bristol Crown Court. Social housing tenants are promised more powers by ministers. Campaigners say what's needed is more housing. More retail misery. The DIY chain Homebase is to close 42 stores, putting 1,500 jobs at risk.
Later on BBC London, we'll have the latest from Westminster as the Mayor says there will be heightened security in London and delays to Tottenham moving to its new stadium because of safety issues.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. A man's being held on suspicion of terror offences after a car collided with cyclists in Westminster. The vehicle ploughed into a security barrier near Old Palace Yard in front of the Houses of Parliament. Several people were taken to hospital and the area is still cordoned off. The man in custody is in his late 20s and police said he's not cooperating with them. Theresa May has praised the rapid response of the emergency services and said her thoughts were with the people who'd been hurt. The government's emergency Cobra committee is to meet this afternoon. Well, Ben Brown is in Westminster for us now. Ben.
Yeah, Rita, we're at the police cordon. It happened just down the road here. Now, this whole area of Westminster is still in lockdown. All the roads around the Palace of Westminster and Parliament Square still sealed off to traffic and to pedestrians. Of the people who were injured, only one is still in hospital, we're being told, and that person doesn't have serious injuries. So there is an overwhelming feeling of relief this lunchtime that what appears to have been another terror attack in London was not worse. This report from Richard Lister.
Sirens wailing across Westminster as police converge on the car within seconds. Immediately after the crash, a moment of confusion as the car sits smoking at the barriers outside the House of Lords. Police start pushing people back. Armed officers, weapons drawn, swarm over to the car. At this stage, they still don't know if this is an accident or an attack. The driver is pulled out. He's filmed standing quietly at the scene in handcuffs. Police confirm later he's been arrested on suspicion of terror offences. A BBC camera caught the progress of the silver Ford Fiesta making its way slowly around Parliament Square. But then the driver darts back onto the wrong side of the road, ploughing through several cyclists waiting for the lights to change. He appears to accelerate and then pulls into the parliamentary access lane, crashing into the barriers.
He's driving about, I'd say, at least 50 miles per hour. The guy, he seemed very focused. He wasn't panicked or anything.
But this is what he left in his wake. On the ground, one cyclist lies seriously injured and is treated by paramedics. 2 people were taken to hospital. A man retrieves the car's licence plate. Another sits on the pavement in a state of shock. This man was with them when the car struck.
My initial reaction was to run after him just because I thought he was a errant car driver. And then as the police said clear the area, it became more apparent that it was something more serious.
With the area cleared, police began their investigation. Sniffer dogs were brought in to check the car for explosives. Police say no weapons were found, but they're treating this as a terror attack.
Given that this appears to be a deliberate act, the method, and this being an iconic site, we are treating it as a terrorist incident, and the investigation is being led by officers from the Counter-Terrorism Command. There is no intelligence at this time of further danger to Londoners or the rest of the UK connected to this incident.
As one of the busiest parts of London remained on lockdown, the Prime Minister praised the courage of the emergency responders. The government, like everyone else, is waiting for a clearer picture to emerge of what happened here.
Our thoughts are with everyone who's been involved with this morning's incident, and I want to thank the emergency services for their response. This is being led by the police. The counter-terrorism police are leading the investigation for the Metropolitan Police, but they are keeping open-minded around this incident.
The police have still not formally identified the arrested man, thought to be in his 20s. They've said he's not cooperating with their investigation. Richard Lister, BBC News.
Well, our Home Affairs correspondent Daniel Sanford is at New Scotland Yard for us this afternoon. And Daniel, what is your sense? Does it look like this was perhaps a lone wolf operating by himself or part of a wider conspiracy?
I think it's very early to say. There's a sense here that it was a slightly low-level attack, though of course an attack on one of the most iconic sites in the country, and to a degree an unsuccessful attack, in that if the man who was driving his vehicle tried to kill anybody, he didn't succeed in doing that, and there is just the female cyclist who's seriously injured in hospital but not in a life-threatening condition. Obviously police trying to work out exactly who this man is. He's not cooperating at the moment, they say. I understand that there is a belief that he's from the Birmingham area, and a lot of effort is being put into that. So we got a suspect possibly from Birmingham in the late 20s, not cooperating with police, and detectives will be wanting to work out from his computers, his smartphone and from his home address if there's any signs of planning of this attack, and of course critically, as you asked, whether there's any sign of him cooperating with others and whether he's therefore part of some wider group. But certainly at this stage we seem to have an unsuccessful terrorist attack on Westminster with the only suspect in custody.
All right, Daniel, thank you very much. Daniel Sanford, our Home Affairs correspondent. There is a meeting of the government's Cobra Emergency Committee shortly at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Also, there's been a lot of praise for the police, for the armed police, the speed and the bravery with which they intervened and made that arrest this morning. Security around the Palace of Westminster was intensified last year. There are calls now perhaps for it to be further tightened, even pedestrianising the whole area so that vehicles can't get anywhere near the Palace of Westminster. Rita, back to you.
Ben, thank you. Ben Brown there. Well, our security correspondent Frank Gardner is here with me now. Frank, in light of all the attacks that happened in the UK last year, how seriously is this one being taken?
Well, you saw from the reaction there that it was a very prompt and robust reaction by the police. So in that sense, they took it very seriously. Armed police reacted immediately. You saw them jumping over barriers. If you drive past the Palace of Westminster, you will see, if you know what to look for, armed police vehicles, which are basically mobile armories that are able to react very quickly. And this all stems back to the Mumbai attack of 10 years ago, 2008, where planners got together and realised that if a similar attack took place here in London, the police simply weren't ready for it at the time. So they've upgunned the police, and now at any one time in central London, the idea is that an armed police response vehicle can react within 8 minutes and be on the scene. In this case, it was very, very early. At the moment, they still don't know exactly what the motivation of this man was. It could be that he's disturbed. Most importantly, was he directed by anybody else? We don't know that yet.
OK, Frank, many thanks. England cricketer Ben Stokes has been found not guilty of a fray by a jury at Bristol Crown Court. The Durham all-rounder was arrested after he was involved in a brawl hours after England played the West Indies in a one-day international in the city in September last year. Our sports editor Dan Rowan has the story.
He's one of world cricket's biggest stars. With both bat and ball, Ben Stokes is arguably England's most important and high-profile player. But 11 months ago, the all-rounder's career and reputation was plunged into uncertainty after he was arrested following a late-night brawl. Stokes found himself forced to swap cricket field for courtroom, accompanied throughout his trial each day by his wife and agent. The 27-year-old, along with two other men, Ryan Hale and Ryan Alley, all denied a charge of a fray. The three had been involved in this late-night brawl outside the city's Embargo nightclub in the early hours of September 25th last year. The court was taken through the events leading up to the incident, as some of England's players visited the venue after winning a one-day international. CCTV footage showed Stokes and teammate Alex Hales trying to re-enter the club. The court heard from doorman Andrew Cunningham, who said Stokes had been abusive to him and then mocked two gay men, throwing a cigarette butt at one of them. The defence insisted it had just been playful banter. Mobile phone footage of the fight that followed was played in court. The jury heard both Alley and Hale had bottles on them initially, Alley appearing to threaten Hales with his. An off-duty community police officer who saw the violence described Stokes as the main aggressor. He knocked both Hale and Alley unconscious, the latter left with significant injuries, including a fractured eye socket. These are the two gay men seen chatting to Stokes outside the nightclub earlier that evening. Neither were called as witnesses in the trial.
I didn't get involved, I was more on the sideline. But yeah, it turned into a massive brawl, and obviously I got a bit scared, so I carried on walking off.
So you didn't witness the entire fight to the end?
I witnessed most of it. Yeah, it was when the guy was on the floor, that's when I kind of thought it was a bit too much for me.
With the prosecution case over, the judge directed the jury to acquit Hale. And the defence began, the court hearing from Stokes for the first time. He said he'd stepped in when the two gay men had been subject to homophobic comments, something he suggested to police back when he was arrested.
Because he was abusing
my
two friends for being gay.
That's all I've been told at the moment, so that's why I've arrested you on suspicion of assault.
Ali denied that, however, insisting there'd just been banter between him, Hale, and the two gay men. Stokes may have since returned to cricket, but in the wake of the incident, he was suspended, meaning that he missed the Ashes series to Australia last winter. Here at Lord's, the ECB will now conduct its own internal inquiry into a saga that's been damaging for both the player and those who run the game.
Obviously, when you're trying to attract new people, families, kids, even women to cricket, you want to show it as a sport which respects people generally and attracts good people who are respectful of each other and have good behaviour. So it wasn't a particularly good episode.
Today's not guilty verdict will come as a huge relief to Stokes and to England. But having been cleared by the courts, he must now wait to see if cricket's governing body takes any action. Dan Rowan, BBC News.
Well, Andy Moore is in Bristol for us. Andy, just bring us up to date.
Well, you can see the media behind me were waiting for Ben Stokes to leave court. This verdict came in just over half an hour ago after the jury had been out for about 2.5 hours. As it was delivered, Ben Stokes closed his eyes, looked down, and then he looked up. His wife, Claire, who's been with him the whole time, began to cry at that stage. His co-defendant, also found not guilty, Ryan Alley, he left court a few minutes ago. He said he was very relieved it was over, but he had no further comment.
Andy, many thanks. Andy Moore there. A motorway bridge has partially collapsed in the Italian city of Genoa, with dozens feared dead. The government says it fears an immense tragedy. The section of road that collapsed was over a river and over an area of the city. Matt Cole reports.
The fear of those watching can clearly be heard as they watch the bridge structure crumble. Police have spoken of a violent cloudburst of rain at the time of the collapse. Viewed from a different angle, the size of the missing section is clear. Down below, crumpled cars and lorries. Witnesses say vehicles had tumbled from the falling roadway. Firefighters say there have been fatalities, and in poor weather, work is ongoing to free people who are trapped. The viaduct was built in the 1960s but refurbished 2 years ago. Much of the fallen section landed on rail tracks. There had been a queue of traffic on the Morandi Bridge when it collapsed. A local news agency claims the Italian ambulance service is suggesting there may be dozens of dead. The Italian Transport Minister has said the collapse seems like an immense tragedy. Matt Cole, BBC News.
Well, our correspondent James Reynolds is in Rome for us. James, a catastrophe unfolding apparently. What is the latest about casualties?
The Interior Ministry has confirmed that at least 11 people have been killed, but very clearly the authorities, the emergency workers on the scene are still trying to work out if anyone else may have been trapped. And we're just getting a sense of the scale of what's happened. Some aerial pictures we've seen suggest that the collapsed section is in two areas, possibly around 100 metres long. And there are immense amounts of debris now on a rail track and in an industrialised area. So all emergency workers in the region now will be going to that area, will be trying to work if anyone else was killed on the ground or if anyone else was trapped in their cars. And then beyond that, of course, questions are already beginning to be asked about why on earth a bridge in industrialised Europe has collapsed. There will be many questions and a full investigation about that.
OK, James, many thanks. James Reynolds there in Rome. The government is considering giving tenants in England more support to hold landlords to account by speeding up the complaints procedure and publishing league tables. The measures are part of what ministers call a landmark opportunity for major reform on social housing. But campaign groups say what's needed is more homes for people on low incomes. Frankie McCamley has more.
In the wake of the Grenfell tragedy, the government promised to gear its social housing policy towards making tenants' lives better. Today, it released a green paper on this issue. Among the ideas are measures to speed up the complaints process, a drive to help get rid of the stigma often attached to social housing, and a scheme giving tenants the right to buy 1% of their home each year.
This is an important next step. We want to consult on this further, but it sets out these significant principles that are about delivering that step change in social housing.
The government paper says a priority is building the social homes we need, but it gives no detail on how that will be done, which leaves hundreds of thousands of people on social housing lists. Freddie's been waiting for a house for more than 18 years because he can't afford to rent or buy.
Well, I've got a very big family. And it's to basically make sure that my family's been supported, right? There's situations where we've actually lost money. I didn't have that money to basically get to buy my own place.
This is one of the sites in England where you can see new social housing being built. We're around 1.5 miles from Manchester city centre, where 500 new units are going up. 200 of those will be social housing. But campaigners say it's not enough. They want more concrete plans from the government.
This Green Paper was an opportunity for the government to right that wrong and to set out a really ambitious target to deliver the low-cost rented homes that England needs. But unfortunately, what we see in this Green Paper is a restatement of announcements that have already been made, and not a single additional house will be built as a result of this Green Paper.
A consultation will run until November, but the questions remain. Will this lead to new homes being built? And will the government deliver on the promises it made in the wake of a fire that killed so many? Frankie McCamley, BBC News.
Homebase is expected to close 42 of its stores, putting around 1,500 jobs at risk. After a comprehensive review, the company said its current store portfolio was no longer viable. It's the latest in a series of store closures on the high street. Our business correspondent Emma Simpson has more.
Homebase has already been closing stores, 16 in the last year, and this one in West London is also going. Today, news of more to come. Homebase now wants to get rid of another 42 underperforming shops.
More stores closing. I mean, it's a shame. It really is. I mean, because there's nothing. I mean, where can we go here in walking distance to get some, you know, plants and things like this? There's nowhere.
I'm sort of ambivalent about it in a way, but obviously if there's a loss of jobs and that kind of thing, then it's very tricky for people, and we're losing lots and lots of the high street shops.
There's no doubt retailers are having a tough time, but here's the thing. Homebase was a profitable business until it was bought 2 years ago by one of Australia's biggest companies. They thought they could teach the Brits a thing or two about DIY, but they made a real hash of it.
We've got carpet and we've even got rugs. Whatever your budget is, Bunnings has got all the flooring that you need.
In Australia, the Bunnings DIY chain is a big success, but its promise of low prices and no-frills stores didn't work and the losses quickly mounted.
Lowest prices are just the beginning.
Homebase was then sold for £1 in May to the turnaround company Hilco. Winning back customers will be tough.
We've got a changing dynamic in the population where we're buying houses later and we're not spending money refurbishing and on DIY. But more of us are shopping online and there are more places to buy the things that Homebase sell. So we're able to do that in supermarkets and variety discounters.
Its new owner said today's decision hadn't been taken lightly, but decisive action was needed to rebuild this well-known brand. This restructuring will need the approval of landlords, but it's yet another blow to our high streets and towns. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
The time is 1:20. Our top story this lunchtime. A man is arrested on suspicion of terrorism offences after a car crashes outside the Houses of Parliament, injuring several people. A motorway bridge has partially collapsed in the Italian city of Genoa, with dozens feared dead. The government says it fears an immense tragedy.
Later on BBC London, we'll have the latest from Westminster as the Mayor praises the response of the emergency services. And sunshine and cloud will compete with each other throughout the day. We'll have a full forecast in the programme in 15 minutes.
Jack Whitehall's casting in a new Disney film has sparked an outcry following reports that he'll play a character who's gay. The comedian wrote that he was honoured to be part of Jungle Cruise, which is due out next year, and it was later reported that he'd be playing a gay man. The news has led some people to ask why a gay actor wasn't cast for the role. Lisa Mazimba has more.
World, get ready for the adventure of a lifetime. Welcome to Jungle Cruise.
Based on a theme park ride, Jungle Cruise, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and filmed on huge sets in Hawaii, is set to be one of 2019's biggest movies. It comes from Disney. The studio has been praised for the way it's dealt with issues like diversity in films like Black Panther.
Hi everybody, welcome to the set of Jungle Cruise.
But the movie, which also stars Emily Blunt, is facing controversy over how her character's brother has reportedly been cast.
Class, I've got good news and bad news. What do you want?
The bad news?
It's not really that Jack Whitehall, best known for his stand-up act and the TV comedy Bad Education, has been cast. It's that, according to a newspaper report, his character is a gay man, with many people saying they're upset that a gay actor wasn't picked for the role.
It's great that Disney has got a gay role like this in one of their big films, but there are so many gay actors that could have played the role that it seems like a missed opportunity. LGBT people are underrepresented in the media and in films, and so Disney had an opportunity here to improve that representation by having a talented gay actor that can embrace the role and play something like this in the film.
Neither Jack Whitehall nor Disney have confirmed the character's sexuality, but unsurprisingly, the issue is still being vigorously debated on social media. Omar Sharif Jr. is an actor and a campaigner on issues like gay representation. He said, "Really, Disney, your first significant gay role will be played by a straight white man, perpetuating stereotypes? Fail. This ship should sink." However, Stephen Fry, who's also campaigned on issues affecting gay people, tweeted, "I share your shame, Jack Whitehall. I played a straight man more than once, a father even. I should have been sent for training, correction and adjustment years ago." Disney are no doubt already carefully assessing whether Jungle Cruise still looks likely to sail to box office success, or whether they think it's already heading for difficult waters. Lisa Mazimba, BBC News.
The rate of unemployment in the 3 months to June of this year fell to its lowest level since February 1975. Today's figures also show that pay rose on average by 2.7%. That's higher than the official rate of inflation. There was also a record fall in the number of EU nationals working in the UK. Our economics correspondent Andy Verity reports.
Many of the UK's workers weren't yet born when unemployment was last this low. At this Leeds-based manufacturer, workers have to be highly skilled to make its fiberglass and plastic products for use in everything from water treatment tanks to showers. Economic theory says when there aren't as many workers, you'll have to pay more to attract and keep them. This firm fits that mould. Pay rises here have been between 3 and 4% for the last 4 years.
I think it gets more and more expensive living. I remember my dad probably saying about 7 years ago, that the national minimum wage was, in his words, okay. If you're clever with your money, it'll be all right. To me, I didn't really think so, because everything just seems to be going up and up and up. And I just think that we as a company had to work on ensuring that it was a fair reward for what people did.
Paying inflation-beating pay rises is working at this firm. Staff who feel valued are prepared to stay, even if they could get more money elsewhere.
Got offered more money last week to work with my mate, and it's double of what I get paid here. I didn't even ask the guy what he wanted doing. I just said no, I wasn't interested. That were coming from one of my good mates.
I want guys. It's not the money here, it's the people. So that's what makes it so good to actually work here.
Workers are now being dealt a stronger hand to press for higher pay. The average pay rise was 2.7%, excluding bonuses, more than inflation, and the number of unemployed is just 4.0% of the available workforce. Separately, today's figures also show the number of EU workers is down by 86,000, the biggest fall in 21 years. Employers can afford to pay inflation-beating rises if the amount each worker produces is going up, also known as productivity. Given that today's figures also show that that is improving, the puzzle for some is why pay isn't rising faster.
Unions don't have the same influence that they did, and in the private sector in particular, there's only about 15% of people who have anyone to speak up for them in relation to their wages. That drives a sentiment that people take what they're given, and unless they can change employment, they're stuck with the wages that they have.
Fewer EU nationals may or may not help workers bargain up their pay, but many employers are now worried they won't get the skilled workers they need to meet demand for their goods, which could get worse when we exit the EU, holding back economic growth. Andy Verity, BBC News.
City regulators are urging people to be on their guard against pension fraud after new figures showed victims lost a total of £23 million in scams last year. The Financial Conduct Authority and the pensions regulator say people are being tricked out of an average of £91,000 each, and it's thought the problem could be far wider, with just a minority of scams ever reported. Kevin Peachy has more.
First, Jennifer's trust was won. Then her savings were lost, stolen by the fraudsters who offered a return that proved too good to be true.
He knew everything. I asked questions, he had the answers to everything.
The scam had begun with a cold call from someone claiming to be an investment advisor. He promised an instant cash sum followed by a regular return, enticing Jennifer and her husband into transferring their pensions of more than £50,000 to the fraudsters' scheme. It was the last they saw of the money.
Life is just going to be very difficult from now on, trying to think about what are we going to do when we get older, because we have nothing to fall back on now.
In cases like this, fraudsters call, text or email out of the blue, offering a free pension review, exploiting the greater access to pension pots that savers now have from the age of 55. They convince victims to transfer their savings to high-rolling investments in hotels or green energy schemes, but the fraudsters pocket the money. More than 250 cases were reported and investigated by police-backed Action Fraud last year. Losses in those cases totaled £23 million. That's an eye-watering average loss of £91,000. But cases are massively underreported. The regulator says more than 100,000 people approaching retirement could have been victims in a year.
Just shy of 40 years pension. He took all of it.
Now the city regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority and the pensions regulator have unveiled a campaign featuring this TV advert, urging people to watch out for the warning signs.
Prevention's better than cure, so we want to give people some really handy tips to be aware of, particularly if they're being
Il est 14h30.
Top of that list is looking on the FCA website to check that a pensions or investment firm is authorised. But campaigners say the government, not just the public, should act.
The government is introducing a ban on pensions cold calling. It's prevaricated over that decision for the best part of 2 years. It's going to be in place by autumn of 2018. The big question is the extent to which that's really going to help people and protect people, and what more policymakers are going to do to ensure that people don't get conned out of their retirement savings.
Ahead of the ban, expect more calls, but don't give the fraudsters your time or your money. Kevin Peachy, BBC News.
The Austrian capital Vienna has beaten Melbourne to be named the world's most livable city. It's the first time a European city has topped the rankings of the annual survey, which is by the Economist Intelligence Unit. Manchester saw the biggest improvement of any European city, rising to 16 places to rank 35th. Manchester's rise puts it ahead of London in the rankings by 13 places, the widest gap between the two cities since the survey began 2 decades ago. Time for a look at the weather now. Here's Darren Bett. Darren.
Thanks very much, Rita. What we're seeing this week is a typical weather pattern for this time of the year. No big area of high pressure keeping it dry, hot and sunny. Instead, a stronger jet stream closer to the UK, and so our weather is coming in from the Atlantic. And over the next few days, some bands of cloud will bring rain down from the northwest. And today we've had some rain around. It's been affecting Northern Ireland and here in Scotland as well. That rain is continuing to push its way eastwards, so we've seen some improvement in the weather already across western Scotland, with most of the rain now in eastern parts of Scotland, just running into the far north of England. For most of England and Wales, though, it will be dry. A little bit of sunshine on what has been a generally fairly cloudy picture across most areas. So a lot of dry weather for England and Wales, away from the far north, maybe a bit damp over some of the hills of Wales. Highest temperatures in the southeast, 25 degrees. Those temperatures similar to those that we had yesterday. By the evening, most places will be dry, but I think as we head through the night, so we're going to find a bit more rain and drizzle coming back into Northern Ireland, far north of England, and especially across western Scotland. Southwesterly winds blowing in a lot of cloud. That's going to keep the temperatures up to around 13 or 14 degrees. For tomorrow, we start dry for England and Wales, bit of sunshine here and there. We'll start to see a bit more rain, though, gathering from the northwest, pushing into Scotland. There could still be a burst of sunshine here and there. Probably dry for most of the day now across Northern Ireland. A little bit of rain crossing the Irish Sea into the northwest of England and Wales, with the highest temperatures further east, where it will be dry with some sunshine, 25, maybe even 26 degrees. Now, if you're wondering where all the real heat has gone, it's just across the Channel, and temperatures 31 degrees in Paris. This weather front, though, will take rain southwards overnight and into Thursday, and then behind it we draw down more of a northwesterly breeze, and that will bring cooler and fresher air. So for Thursday, the rain's stuck more across the southeast of England and East Anglia. Behind it, some sunshine follows on, but increasing numbers of showers as you head towards Scotland and Northern Ireland in particular. And across the board, temperatures will be a little bit lower, I think, on Thursday. It'll feel cooler and fresher. Top number this time, about 21 degrees. Now, moving into Friday finally, and we see another weather system coming in from the Atlantic, again bringing most of the rain towards the northwest of the UK. Most of England and Wales, away from the northwest of England and North Wales, probably having a dry day. Some sunshine, the best of that in the southeast, and here temperatures lifting just a little bit again, up as high as 23 or 24 Celsius. Rita.
Thank you, Darren. A reminder now of our main story this lunchtime. A man from the Birmingham area is arrested on suspicion of terrorism offences after a car crashes outside the Houses of Parliament, injuring several people. Well, that's all from BBC News at 1. So it's goodbye from me. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.